Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. This is episode number 135 of Honest HR Nitrous. This is called, Is Your Resume Losing You Jobs? Here's How to Fix It. So we're going to be talking about that and more. This is primarily a Q&A, so if you have been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get into the chat box. You should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face, depending on what device you're watching this on. And this is an opportunity for you guys to let me know what you're struggling with, what you're wondering about, and I will do my best to help you out. That's the whole point of this. Yeah. And this is brought to you by my course, my Get Hired course. More about that later. You can see it on the screen. There are 10 people here. Thank you for joining me today. Yeah, TGIF. So if you are searching for a job right now, if you're in the throes of job search, hopefully you have a chance to lighten the load on the weekend. Think about something else, if only for a moment. Recharge the battery. And that will be an investment in how effective you will be and in your mental health. That's the whole point. Job search is rough. It really is. So if you are in the middle of it right now, take care of yourself. You know, it's not easy. It's a exercise in rejection. And I've commented on this before. It's, you know, the moment of our lives when you have to appear confident and you have to appear, you know, on the ball and in control and in charge of things, yet simultaneously you're experiencing the most rejection you'll ever experience in your entire life all at once. And if that weren't enough, it's also a moment of the greatest uncertainty if you're between jobs. So if it's getting to you, you're normal. Congratulations. You are not alone. And, you know, I want you to know this. You're awesome. It also does some weird things to your perspective about yourself and your perspective about the world and your prospects and all this kind of stuff. It tends to be very pessimistic. You know, we think this is gonna define us. It isn't. You're gonna be fine. It's just a matter of time. Okay. The more you learn about how job search works, the further you'll go. The more you work on yourself, you develop your skills in terms of networking, in terms of writing resumes, in terms of discovering jobs, in terms of interviewing, all that kind of stuff, the further you'll go. So that's what we're here to do. So if you have any questions about any part of that process and how anything works, get into it. Get in the chat. Let me know what the deal is, and we can kick it around. Now, just for the purposes of starting things off, let's go back to the title there. Is your resume losing you jobs? Here's how to fix it. Yeah, if you are applying for jobs, if you are looking for work in the posted job market, that's where you see jobs posted publicly, like usually on the internet these days. That's called the posted job market. That's only something like 15% of all the jobs that are out there are in the posted job market. So hopefully you know this. The other 85% of jobs exist and you can get them, but they're in something called the hidden job market. That's where the job exists in the minds of the hiring managers, right? And what they would rather do is they'd rather fill that role without having to resort to posting it publicly. What they'd rather do is they'd rather find the right person on a sort of one-to-one kind of basis. So that's basically accessed through the world of networking. If you are an extrovert, you know all about networking. If you're an introvert, you may not know about networking, but you can kick ass at it. It really isn't that hard. We can do networking on social media, social networking, things like that these days. So it actually, you know, it really levels the playing field. And you don't have to meet another solitary soul. You don't have to schmooze. You don't have to go out and cold call people or anything like that. So anyway, if you want to get into that, we can certainly get into that today. But with regard to the posted jobs, we're talking about, is your resume losing you jobs? Traditionally, you'd be able to do a one-size-fits-all resume and use that for everything, you know, send it out to all the jobs you're applying for. Sadly, those days are kind of over. If you try and do that now, you may still get some interviews, but they'll be very few and far between. The name of the game these days, unfortunately, is to have to customize your resume. That will give you the most chance of getting a bite, right? Getting called in for an interview or anything like that. That's just how it goes. And there's been many forces that have been pushing things in that direction. But that's the name of the game. And so what a lot of people are doing that are sort of looking in the posted job market and being successful at that is they're customizing their resume. They're usually using some form of AI to help them with it. Not because you can't do it on your own manually. You certainly can. The difference is that it's very labor intensive. So if you get AI doing it for you, doing the heavy lifting for you, doing the things that you've told it to do, and it does the work, then you can apply for many more jobs with a customized resume or a customized cover letter than you could if you were doing it manually. That's the idea. Okay, LiveClips says, if LiveClips gets the award for first person in the chat today, by the way, so congratulations. Best way to prepare for a 3-part interview: first phone, second Zoom, third in person. Well, it's pretty simple. First thing you do is you learn all the answers to common job interview questions and behavioral job interview questions, okay? So the common job interview questions, there's about 10. Things like, tell me about yourself, what is your weakness, what are your salary expectations, all that kind of stuff. Learn what the answers are for those, and then practice it on a personal basis, just practicing the answers, memorizing them, getting them straight in your head, right? Then learn how to handle behavioral questions. Behavioral questions are a little bit different. They are customized to the person. And the problem with them is that there's literally a million of them. Like, it's not like there's only 10 or 50 or 100. There's like a million, That's the problem with them. They could ask you, tell me about a time, and then insert whatever thing that they make up, no matter how specific. Right, there you go. There's an original question. Now, have you prepared for that? Have you memorized an answer for that specific question? No, you haven't, right? So the way you handle those is you do it in reverse. Instead, you pick about 10 stories from your past, things like your greatest successes, things when you had to deal with failure, things when you had to deal with various types of conflict, with coworkers or bosses or customers or whatever, right? And you vetted these stories, you practiced telling them in a certain format, like the STAR format is a popular choice, and then you've memorized them, right? So you've done those two things. You know how to answer the standard questions, you know how to answer behavioral questions. Great. Okay. That's phase 1 of 2. The other phase, phase 2, is now you do mock interviews with somebody else. If you can afford it, get a career coach. Not me, I'm not a career coach, but somebody else. There's a lot of career coaches out there. They'll work with you on you being able to do a kick-ass interview. They can give you objective feedback about how you're doing. They can give you advice on what to work on, things like this. That's why you hire them. The poor person's version of that is to do it with a friend or family member. Okay, so you grab like a friend or family member and you get them to do some pretend interviews with you, some mock interviews. They pretend to be the interviewer. They interview you. It's great practice for you. And as an added bonus, if you trust these people and you trust their opinions, they can also give you feedback. You can say, how am I doing? Like, am I doing something that you think I should do differently? That kind of thing, right? You do 3 or 4 of these a day for 10 days. That's 30 to 40 of them. You'll have the whole thing down, right? And that's how you prepare. And then when you do this 3-part thing that you're talking about, where you do a screening interview, you do a Zoom interview, you do it in person, you'll be able to knock it out of the park each time. So hopefully that makes sense. I wish you best of luck, LiveClips. Get in the chat. There are 14 people here. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and we will get into it. In the meantime, while we're waiting for questions to roll on in, check out this course. This is my Get Hired course. This will teach you how to get hired in the posted job market and in the hidden job market. So how to get referrals, all that kind of stuff. Check this out. There's a link in the description box under this live stream to that course and to a video that explains the course. So it's as transparent as possible. You see what you get, how it works, etc. So check that out. Yeah. Now, what I think is kind of fun is to do this. I encourage people to use things like ChatGPT. It's a great resource. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a hell of a useful tool. And there are a lot of these out there, a lot of different versions of it. So let's, for the sheer hell of it, let's run this question by ChatGPT. Okay, so what's the best way to prepare for a 3-part interview? And specifically, that's a phone call, then a Zoom call, then an in-person interview. And I'm just out of curiosity. I'm just doing this to see what it says. Think of it as a filter funnel. Is this person worth real time? Can this person do the job? Do we want to work with this person every day? Screening, not selling. Your goal not to get eliminated. So, for example, on a screening call, they're going to ask you a question like, what are your salary expectations, right? And they want a number. And that's what they're going to do. And the entire reason they're asking you this is not to accommodate you. It's to eliminate you. If you answer with a number over a certain hurdle that is known only to them, they eliminate you right there and then, simply for that answer. So, there's a way to answer that on a form, and then there's another way to answer that in person. They're not the same. So that's the idea. Now, if you get to the offer stage, then, where they've given you a written offer and they're wanting you to sign it and stuff, then you can have a serious conversation about salary, about compensation, but not in the screening interview and not even in the regular interview. You know what I'm saying? So like it changes at different stages, right? What their goals are. Big mistakes to avoid for the screening interview: over-explaining or trying to impress. Trying to impress is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, like going into great detail. They're just looking at very broad strokes at this point. Are you qualified? Are there any obvious red flags with you? That kind of thing. That's what the screening interview is about. Zoom interview, competence and communication. So job interviews are really about your soft skills. They're not about your qualifications. Don't be fooled by the fact that they talk about your qualifications as content in the job interview. The application stage was about your qualifications. The whole point of bringing you in to see what you're like as a person, that's about your soft skills. If you're super off-putting, if you've got like a really bad temper, if you, have communication issues, you get offended at like every little thing, these are going to be sudden death elimination things. They're going to eliminate you for those outright. It doesn't matter, how qualified you are. If they can't work with you, the game's over. Sorry. So that's what they're looking for. How agreeable you are, how easygoing you are, how, will you come in and rock the boat and, piss everybody off and make a bunch of demands. That's what they're looking for, right? In a job interview. That's what they're testing you for. Okay. So that's the purpose of it. Okay, so big mistakes to avoid: long, wandering answers. Yeah, that's preparation. You do your preparation, like I said, and you'll have the answers down. They'll be the right answers, and they'll be well rehearsed. Number 3, in-person interview: trust and fit. This is where, like I said, it's all about your soft skills. Do they click with you? Do they like you? Do they get along with you? That kind of thing. Okay. Big mistakes to avoid: trying to perform. Be steady, thoughtful, and human. Well, that's delightfully vague, but basically just be agreeable, be on your A game when it comes to your charisma and your likability, usually they offer the job to the person they like the best. It's just that simple, right? Everybody who comes down for an interview at that point is qualified. The only way they wouldn't be is if they lied on their resume about their credentials. So assuming that hasn't happened, every single person they're talking to is qualified. They then pick the one they like the best. That's usually how these things go. Okay, so likability is a huge, huge part of this. And don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you how it is. That's the behaviors that we see, and it does make sense. You know, if you were hiring an assistant or something, you would speak to a whole bunch of people that are all qualified to be your assistant. You'd pick the one you like the best, the one you want to work with, right? This is exactly the same thing. Somebody says, how long should you wait to call after submitting your resume? I don't know what the exact situation is, but just in general, I wouldn't call after sending my resume. I would submit my resume and, get on with my life. You have a lot of, if you're looking in the posted job market, you're going to need to apply to many, many things before you get a bite on average. So I would get to that. You know what I'm saying? If this is like a dream job or something very, very specific that you want, in that case, I would recommend you take a different approach. Instead of leading with just submitting a resume, I would lead by reaching out to them, preferably the hiring manager. Okay? Or if you have a recruiter that's the contact person for that, you could reach out, contact them and say, hey, I see that this job you're looking for this. I happen to have this, and this. Does it make sense for me to apply for this? Right? And they'll probably say, sure, yeah, it seems like it. And you go, okay, well, here you go. Here's my application. Please let me know if there's anything else you need. Right? And what you're doing is you're giving them a preview of your communication skills, how professional you are, how enthusiastic you are. You're signaling all of that. So your resume is going in at the same time that you're signaling all these different things. That's a little more powerful, right? So sometimes that can give you an edge, and that'll help them select you, or this recruiter anyway, select you for an interview. Maria Sipsis says, how do I find jobs in the hidden job market? Where do I look for them? Oh, well, the best thing to do is to take this course. But if you don't want to do that, just because I say so, there's a video linked in the description box below that walks you through what that looks like. Okay? The short answer to how to get jobs in the hidden job market is the word networking. Now, networking is an umbrella term that covers many, many different types of activity. The only thing they have in common is that people are communicating with each other. That's all networking is. So, there are many things in that world. Now, if you're an introvert and you shy away from social interaction, especially face-to-face social interaction, or even social interaction over the phone, that's not your bag. You're certainly not alone with that. You can do this extremely effectively. Okay? Now, the thing is, these jobs, they exist, like I said at the beginning of this live stream, they exist in the minds of hiring managers. Okay? I've been a hiring manager for many years. All that means is a person who is a manager at an organization who needs to hire someone. That's all that means. They don't work for the HR department. They work in any conceivable department in the company. They're tasked with doing a certain amount of work. They have, like, for example, say, the accounting department. They are responsible for processing all the invoices for all the transactions in the company. Okay? And that department will be run by the chief accountant or something, chief bookkeeper. And they supervise a team of, say, 10 accountants or 10 bookkeepers. Okay? Now, that chief bookkeeper who runs that department, they see that they're receiving so many invoices they can't process them, they can't keep up. There's too much work. So they've asked for approval to hire someone They've decided I need to hire someone. I got 10 accountants. I need 2 more. So in their head, they're like, okay, I need to hire 2 more accountants, right? Now, usually the way this works is it's completely up to them how they do this, right? They could hire people they know. They could promote people from a different department or like, they could promote somebody upwards into that department. They could hire people from the outside. They could post the job. There's many different ways to that you might find someone who's qualified and that would want to work for you, right? But right now, all they know is that they need to hire 2 more people, right? So that job exists in their head. It's not posted anywhere. It's not written down anywhere. Now, usually the way this stuff works is that the moment that hiring manager, that manager who is now hiring, mentions this to somebody else in the company around them, they mention that to their team, those 10 accountants. And the 10 accountants start coming to them and saying, hey, I hear we're hiring, listen, I've got a brother or a friend or a former coworker that I think would be perfect for this. Shall I tell them to send you their resume? Right? Now, let's say I'm the hiring manager. I've worked with that accountant for 10 years. I trust them. If they're telling me that this person is good and I should check them out and that they are looking for a position and they would be good for this, and I trust this person because we've been working together for a while, I'll probably take them up on that. It doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily hire that person automatically. I probably won't, but I'm going to at least investigate them based on this recommendation, okay? So that's called a referral, right? The reason why so many jobs are not posted and instead they exist on the on the hidden job market is because it's better for the hiring manager if they hire someone through a referral because those people tend to work out more. You don't get crazy people. You don't get people that lied about every single thing on their resume. You don't get people with like major personality issues or some other issue, personal problems. They're not like extremely disruptive. The idea is that this person I trust is staking their reputation in recommending that person, right? So they're not going to recommend somebody that's not going to work out because now the boss is never going to trust them again. That's the idea. So that's why it carries weight, right? Now, one of the common ways that you can take advantage of this, if you don't know anybody, if you don't have any contacts and know of any jobs, is something called direct outreach. Okay, that's the most common form of networking to get jobs. Okay, so I'm trying to think. Should I like show it to you on chat? Let's do ChatGPT. I've done this a bunch of times, but we'll do it so you can see that this is not coming from me. Okay, this is not something I'm making up. This is out there. So here, this is ChatGPT. In case you don't know. Okay, so with regard to the hidden job market, the method of getting a job called direct outreach and how you can contact hiring managers and have them consider you for a job if they have it. How does it work? And I'm doing this also partly to show you what you can do to learn some of this stuff. This is a good starting point. Okay, this is not very exotic stuff I'm talking about. Okay, so this is not cold applying, creating a hiring conversation. What direct outreach actually is. Direct outreach is proactive, targeted contact with someone who owns the work, feels the pain of the work, would benefit from helping. Basically, somebody that can help you, somebody that's at a level above you, right? So they can hire you or help you in some way, okay? So, hiring managers and then basically hiring managers. I mean, these are all different versions of hiring managers, okay? Not recruiters, not HR inboxes. Very important. These are not recruiters we're talking about, okay? You do not get hidden jobs through recruiters. Recruiters exist to deal with posted jobs. That's what they do, okay? I know what it's doing with a mental model. Okay, so step by step, how direct outreach works. You identify the right person, okay? Yeah, no shit. You reach out without asking for a job, yes. So, well, that's okay. That's one way to do it, I suppose. Well, this is not quite accurate. This is not direct outreach. This is something called informational interviews, which is a fancier version of direct outreach. Okay. The first reply you want is not yes. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to give you a custom version of this. So the standard way of doing direct outreach is you identify an employer first. So in the video that I've linked in the description box below called How Successful People Get Jobs, where I walk you through this, okay? And I've done this live on some of my live streams recently. Go to Google Maps, type in the name of your city or your region. So you're looking at a map of your city or your region, okay? And then in the search box, enter terms that describe your industry or your vocation or your education, like that. So for example, in our example, if you're processing invoices, you might type in bookkeeper, you might type in accountant, you might type in, anything like that, invoices, things like this. And what you're going to see is on the map, all these little organizations will pop up. Okay. Now, maybe bookkeeping is not a great example because every single organization has a bookkeeping and accounting function, right? So it's not great. But let's say you worked in automotive repair or something like that. You would type in garage, you would type in industrial repair, you would type in vehicles, you would type in auto show, you would type in, like anything related to it. And you see all these organizations pop up. They all have the potential to hire you if you're a fully trained mechanic that works on cars, right? That's the idea. So you identify all the targets around you. Then you can use tools like LinkedIn to look inside those organizations to the hiring managers. Oh, one of the things that popped up when I typed in auto was this thing that says Joe's Garage. This is its address. This is its website. It's located 4 blocks from where I live, maybe. So you go to LinkedIn, you do a people search, restrict it to your city or your region, and then type in Joe's Garage, and then do a people search. And it finds the individuals. Oh, look, here's the owner of Joe's Garage. Here's the general manager of Joe's Garage. Here's several of the mechanics. Here's the office manager, right? So of those people, who can help you? Well, maybe the owner and maybe the general manager. It seems like they would be certainly able to hire mechanics, right? So what you do is you then send them a message. There's a couple of different ways to do this, but you send them a message. And the most simple version of it is to say, hello, my name is X. I'm a fully qualified mechanic. I solved this problem. I specialize in working on these vehicles or something. If ever you're looking for a fully qualified mechanic to join your team, please let me know. I live nearby. I know you guys do great work in this area. I'd love to work with you. Have yourself a great day, right? And the idea is that you don't know if these people are hiring right now. The odds are is that they're not. It'll be something like 95% chance they're not. But what that means is that if you send this message, this template, to 100 different contacts, 100 different targets, 5% of them, 5 of them will be hiring someone like you. They'll be looking for someone like you right now. And you just landed right in their lap. So when the hiring manager is thinking, I really need to add a mechanic to my team, and this is kind of a pain in the ass because I'm in the business of fixing cars and running the shop. I'm not in the business of sitting in rounds of job interview and posting jobs and all this kind of crap. This is great because they seem fully qualified. I've got a sample of their communication skills. They seem professional. They seem motivated. They seem particularly passionate about working here. That's why they're reaching out. That bodes well. Maybe I'll give them a call. Maybe before I post a job or anything, I'll check out this person, right? That's the idea. So in a nutshell, that's direct outreach. There's all kinds of variations of it. But if you notice, this is something you do from your home. You haven't had to talk to anyone on the phone. You haven't had to meet anybody. You haven't had to do a Zoom interview, right? You have people contacting you and saying, hey, we may be looking. I'm not sure. Do you want to come down? Let's chat. That's like the equivalent of a job interview. So that's how things like direct outreach work. But learn about it properly and then start trying stuff, and you can do this. LiveClip says, what's the best way to answer salary expectation question? LiveClip says, do you live stream only on YouTube or also TikTok, Switch? No, I do YouTube. It's enough work just doing YouTube without like trying to do everything else at once. So, I'm just here. So to answer your question, here we go. If they ask you the salary question on a web form or on any kind of form where you have to type in a number, and they make it so you can't skip the question and you have to give one number, here's what you do. Think of all the things you don't know about the job. You don't know what benefits they pay. You don't know what the hours are. You don't know if you have to work holidays. You don't know if it's remote work. You don't know if your boss is a giant prick. You don't know if there's opportunities for advancement. You don't know any of this critical stuff, but yet they're prompting you for a number. So what you do is you imagine that all those things you don't know, they're all best case scenario. Okay? Since you're not telling me one way or another, I'm going to assume that they're all best case scenario. They pay great benefits. I never have to work holidays if I don't want to. It's as much remote work as I would want. And there are plenty of opportunities for advancement. Now, fill in the number. What number would you need? Probably be a smaller number, right? So that's what you fill in. Now, if they proceed down the path with you and talk to you again and give you more information about these blank spaces that you don't know, and it turns out that some of these things are not best case scenario, then you can always revise your number upwards as they choose to disclose things about it, right? So that way you get in, they talk to you long enough to see your value, right? And everything's above board because you're not being dishonest or misrepresenting anything. Now, if it's a job interview and you're talking to a person, it's a little bit different. You want to not give a number. The moment you give a number, you're screwed. That's how these things usually work. Because either the number is too high and they eliminate you for it, or the number is really low and you've just boxed yourself into only getting paid a small amount for this job, which now it might not make sense for you to take the job, right? Or it turns out they could have paid you a lot more, but because you said, you'd be happy with a low number, now you're committed to that, or, you are committed to that if you try and, pretend later that now you demand more, that there's other issues with that. So you lose as soon as you give a number. So the first thing you can try and do is you try and wiggle out of it. What you do is a common thing to do is to say, well, it's too soon to say. Now, sometimes they'll buy that and they'll move on. Other times they won't. If they don't buy it, they say, okay, yeah, it's soon, but we still need a number. You could try something else. You could say, listen, this job was posted. Therefore, it must have been officially approved, right? It must have been discussed and approved. And so therefore, the salary range must have been discussed and approved. So can I ask what it is? You turn the question around at them. Right? Now, sometimes that'll work. They'll say, oh, well, our official range is between here and here. And then in which case you say, well, that's fine with me, right? Okay, and so there you go. Now, if they refuse to tell you a range, or they say, no, we don't know what the range is, but we're still hiring for it, but you need to give us a number, then the last thing you go to is you give them a range. Low to high. Really low to really high, where those two numbers are They're not ridiculous. They're not completely out to lunch. They're a stretch, but they're not like impossible, right? And you say like, look, at this point, not knowing even if you pay benefits or like, any kind of critical details for the job, all I can say is that somewhere between here and here should be fine. Somewhere in there will be fine. That's all I can tell you now, right? Now, the advantage of doing that is that they can't eliminate you because you ask for too much, because your range started pretty low. But it also allows you to ask for a higher number later on because you never committed to a low number, right? There's wonderful little games we play here, but that tends to work. Okay, so that's kind of a standard way of handling that question. Liv Clip says, please try going for that many younger people around these platforms. Well, thank you for your advice. Arshdeep says, is it hood to talk to different people of same organization? Sorry, don't know what that means. Is that like some youth slang? In which case, if you could just explain in proper English what you actually mean, I'll be happy to respond to that. Yeah, so there you go. Anyway, there's 24 people here. Thank you for joining me today, TGIF. Hopefully you're doing okay. Job search is brutal. It's not a fun process. It's not a fun thing to be in for most people. If you're confused or you're having a rough time, congratulations, you're not alone, And the best of us find this a very, very trying experience. So, learn all you can about it. There's a difference between being qualified and, having value and knowing how to get a job. They're two separate things, right? Just because you're qualified for a job doesn't mean that you can instantly get one, right? So that's the deal. We had more writing, and then it sort of went away. So I don't know if people are deleting their things or what's going on. I can see in this little box up on the screen here. Good. Oh, that was a typo. Is it good to talk to different people at the same organization? Yeah, it can be good. I mean, it depends what the situation is. You can do it in a way that's idiotic and you can totally sabotage yourself, or you can do it in a productive way and sort of cast a wide net and have a greater likelihood that something is going to come of it. Depends on how you do it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing depending on the details. Some organizations are huge. They have multiple departments, most of which don't really share every detail with each other, So if you're talking to someone in this department, someone in that department, those people never talk to each other. They're self-contained business units or self-contained departments. So, maybe these people over here, they don't really have anything they'd hire you for right now. But these people here, they got a need for something that you can help with. So it makes sense to talk to more than one department. Greg says, what's your advice on Bridgestone jobs? I got an interview for ad dishwashing / prep cook job. I got the interview from a direct outreach approach, and the restaurant was looking for a person with my skill set of experience. Okay. What is a Bridgestone job? Is not a real official job category. It's a term of art people use, especially career hidden job, describe a very specific type of role, a role that exists in practice but not formally yet, named after the idea of temporary bridge, something that connects a current problem to a future. Okay, that's a new one on me. I don't recall ever coming across that term before. Okay, so it's like an unofficial worker type job. How do you feel about the job market? What's your advice on Bridgestone jobs? I got an interview I don't really know much about that, to be honest with you. I never really encountered that. Like I said, unofficial position. Is that what that means? Listen, the way these things work in general is you get the job through networking. They give it to you because you showed up. And then on top of it, they liked you. Like that's really all it takes, right? So for jobs where maybe, it isn't like the qualifications aren't like a critical thing. It's maybe a less skilled job, but they need someone to do it. It's going to matter more about the fact that you showed up and the fact that, they like you. Like, for example, if you, are just starting out or something, or you work in construction or whatever, and you're just starting out, you can show up to a construction site and maybe they will be needing casual laborers that day. In which case, it's kind of like first come, first serve. You show up to the site, you say, hey, are you looking for any casual labor? The foreman is there. The foreman says, actually, yeah, we got some stuff we need some people to do. Are you approved to like work and all that? And you say, yeah. And, they'll be, okay, you're hired, you for the day, and so on, right? So you get stuff like that, and that's like, technically that's all networking, right? You're showing up. That's why you get the job. And, you can communicate and you have some charisma, and they'll say, okay, sure, So where were we at here? Lockbar says, how do you feel about the job market over the next 3 months? I assume it will pick up as we get further into the first quarter. I don't know, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. They're always hiring. When we have a recession, which we're not in, the jobs tend to go underground. They tend to go into the hidden job market, but they're still there. So the other thing is that looking at how that stuff works, there's a couple of different sources of information. First, there's the official labor statistics as compiled by the government, right? Those tend to be more accurate because they have privy to everybody's tax information. So they know who's working and who's working where and how much money they're making, right? So you get those stats. And then separately, you get stats from people like talking heads and other people in the in the job search business, like Indeed, LinkedIn, they are players in the job search business. They'll publish their own stats and their own commentary on how things are going. But those are skewed because they're only measuring the posted job market. They're not measuring the hidden job market. That's where the majority of stuff is. So the problem is a lot of people talk about like how the market's doing. They use these two sources interchangeably, and it just results in a lot of unintelligence. So, certain industries are up, certain industries are down. There's like a big real threat of an AI bubble popping. If it does, that means it'll be temporarily bad news for, people in the IT sector and that kind of stuff. But it will barely, it should hardly affect people in other unrelated industries. You know what I mean? So, that's expected to explode, in the near future. I don't know when. I don't make it my business to predict these things, but it would not surprise me if that happened tomorrow or it happened in a year. I'm not sure. Greg says, I'm still looking into the geology company by LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah, I remember. Was that you? I think that was you. We talked previously. You're looking for a geology thing. That came up. Okay, well, I hope you get it. If you have any specific questions, let me know. Archdeep meant good. Okay, yeah. That was a typo. I understand that. I apologize. I thought you were using some some kind of lingo, right? I'm an old dude. So I'm not down with that stuff. So if I see a word that I don't understand, I just assume it's some kind of lingo of which I'm not privy to. Greg says it's a part-time job that can get me by for the moment until I land a geology job. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, like a casual job kind of thing. Yeah, all I can say is hidden job market and networking. That's where everything is. If you're an introvert, you can kick ass at this. I mean, I'm an introvert. I'm a technical introvert. I got a degree in engineering, and I'm an only child, so I have very underdeveloped social skills. I just learned how to, do public speaking and how to have conversational skills after many, many years of, being awful at that stuff and learning how to do it through things like Toastmasters and other things you do, and then practicing it. I mean, you can do this too. So if that's the fear, I know some people have a fear of that stuff, And the networking thing, you don't have to know a single solitary person. That's the thing. If you know 1,000 people, like if you're a social butterfly and you know 1,000,000 people, yes, you can tap an existing network to get a referral. Yes. But there are so many other things in that umbrella of networking that don't involve you knowing anybody. We already talked about things like direct outreach. I've done a video on my YouTube channel about 4 months ago. It's called How I'd Get a Job. It's 45 minutes long, and it goes through 11 different methods of getting a job. So check that out if that's kind of what you're looking for. Lockbars says, temp job is a good way to get in the door for restaurants if that's a temp agency. Yes, in general, if you're open to gig work, contract work, things like this, those can be great ways to get your foot in the door. You can get on the inside of these organizations. And then once you're on the inside, you can really go for trying to influence things to get yourself hired permanently, with something better. Like when I was a CEO, we used to hire a lot of people on contract, like for terms. And, even though you can attract the kind of talent that, you might get if it was a more permanent thing, we did it intentionally as like a sort of probation period. Sometimes we get people and they really wouldn't work out, in which case you let the term expire. Sometimes we get people that were fantastic, in which case you hire them permanently, and it was so that we had an easy out, but we wanted to see what people were made of. And it was a great, like, low risk way of doing that. Arshdeep says, is it good to talk about the same position with different people from the same organization? I already answered that. The answer was yes. But it depends on the situation, depends what you do. Alex Rosca says, I've noticed a weird thing. Instead of a company HR having CVs in front of them, they write your experience on papers. We live in the 21st century, but they write someone's experience on paper. Wahaha, aren't they backwards and stupid, right? I'll tell you something, though. Paper still has some advantages. Not very many, but some. It's the most portable thing. It's the most rugged and resilient thing. The battery doesn't die on paper. It's thinner than anything, any kind of device, etc., etc. It's with you. You can throw it into your pocket and then go on your way. You know what I mean? There are still some advantages, and that's why people still use it. Why? You assist as a candidate and they are not prepared having your CV in front. Well, you're absolutely right to spot that a lot of these people are just plain incompetent. And I'm not being nasty. It's because, first of all, recruiter is an entry-level position. So you're getting entry-level people, right? That's one. Another thing is that they're not particularly organized to begin with. We're not talking about geniuses here. Now, they're, like, no offense, I'm not putting anyone down, because there are some absolutely fantastic people working as recruiters that are extremely talented, that have all kinds of skills. But unfortunately, they're kind of in the minority. The other thing is that my theory is nobody really, has the ambition of like, oh, I'm going to be a recruiter. I mean, some people do, but it's usually not the case. The people that end up working as recruiters, they're doing it, they fell into it. Wasn't their ambition, The other thing is that when they do job interviews, if that's what you're talking about, if you look at their day, what they're doing is they're booking interviews back to back. Whether they're face-to-face interviews or they're Zoom interviews, they're booking them back to back. There's pretty much no time between them. And a lot of interviews run over, right? So what that adds up to is if you're going down for a face-to-face interview or a Zoom interview, your interview starts and these people haven't had a chance to do any preparation whatsoever. You know, the conventional wisdom when you're doing a job interview is that you put their resume in front of you. And, you know, that's your guide to the entire interview. You could just ask them questions about stuff on their resume. Oh, I see you've got this. What's up with that? You know, right? Any idiot can do a job interview when you're just going off their resume. I don't understand why they would take stuff off their resume, write it on a piece of paper, and then, you know, I don't know. I'm not making excuses for these people. Sometimes within large organizations, they have a lot of retarded formal rules that tie their hands in how they do things. But who knows? What's this? The Recce report says, I have an interview next week with a regional healthcare company for an administrative and billing assistant job. It will be my first job in medical billing. Okay, well, good luck with that. If you have any questions, let me know. Alex Rosca says, and they refuse you even more rapidly. Yeah, well, you see, once you understand their incentives and their situation, then their behavior starts to make sense, right? Sometimes this stuff can be explained by the fact that they have an overabundance of candidates and they don't have a lot of time. They don't have any time to get to know you. So what they do is they make decisions that are made very quickly based off, you know, very superficial information, and they're based on stereotypes, right? That's what we see. And we see them acting like that because once you realize that like 800 people have applied for the job, you know, and they can afford to be very picky and they can almost get away with anything in this process because somebody will stick around for it, then that explains some of their behavior. Arsheep says, when you get rejected after someone referred you, what should you do? I feel a bit awkward to reach back out to the person who referred you. Yeah, well, I don't know the circumstances, but typically what that means is that it's bad for that person too, right? If that person, say you have a contact, say someone that you worked with 5 years ago, they were a coworker of yours in another company, you moved on and they moved on. Now they're in this other company, company B, right? So you reach out to them and say, listen, you know, I hear company B is hiring and you hire people like me. Can you put in a good word for me? Right? And that former coworker of yours, they say, sure, yeah, I'll put in a good word for you. So they maybe go to their boss and say, listen, I understand, you know, we're hiring for this. I'd like to recommend a person. I worked with them 5 years ago. They were really good. You know, should I get them to send you their resume? And the boss says, sure. So you send in your resume and it comes out, oh, sorry, no, we're not going with them, right? Now, maybe they interviewed you first before saying no, or maybe they didn't. They just rejected you outright. I'm not sure. But usually that's not great for your friend there, right? Because they are putting their reputation on the line to a degree to recommend you. And if you don't work out or you prove to be a disappointment, then it's bad for them also. So, you know, so that's the deal. But what I would do, just generally speaking, what I'd do is, let's say it didn't work out. You were officially told, sorry, we're going a different direction or something. I would reach out to the person that referred you. I said, listen, I've just received a word that company B is not going to proceed with me. You know, and that's fine. Listen, I just want you to know I appreciate you putting me forward. I know that, you know, you might have had to go out on a limb a little bit. Anyway, I appreciate the vote of confidence, Thanks so much. Hopefully we'll have a chance to work together in the future. Have yourself a great day. Just some like note like that, I think, is a good gesture. So depending on the details, if you can send something like that, that might be a good idea. It's just a little more professional and personable. And it salvages the relationship. So they go away thinking like, oh, I still like, my friend here that I recommend, and I still would recommend them again. At least they're polite and they're very gracious about the whole thing. Alex Rosca says, yesterday I and 6 people and only two were accepted, and instead of having CVs, even for a low job like production operator, not paid well, it's mind-blowing for them to be picky. Like, you mean picky? Possibly? The grammar's a bit shaky, so I'm not entirely sure exactly what you're saying, but it sounds like you were turned down for this. I'm sorry to hear that. Once again, when people's behavior doesn't make sense to you, it's usually because you don't understand their incentives. Like, you don't understand, you don't see what they see, you don't understand what is pushing them in different directions. So once you understand the incentives, then all the behaviors all make sense, right? That's usually how these things go. While we're waiting for the next question, check out my Get Hired course. That's this thing right here. There's a link in the description. This is all my advice in one place: how to get hired in the posted job market and how to get hired in the hidden job market. And I cover things like direct outreach thoroughly from scratch. So it covers all the principles, all the things you have to do, to set yourself up so that this thing can work. And I also cover a couple of other things like informational interviews as a way to get hired. That's extremely powerful. I've gotten all kinds of consulting clients from doing that at a very high level. So check that out. There's a link in the description box to the course and also to a video I did that describes the course. So check that out. Also, there's this. This is the other course that people here might be interested in. This will teach you advanced communication skills. So if you're looking to get promoted in a job, tacking on communication skills is a really, really great thing that will help you to be seen as a contender to move upward. If they're going to promote anybody, it will be you. So check that out. For a variety of reasons, communication skills can open a lot of doors for you. Everything I learned from going from a supervisor when I started to a CEO when I ended up in my corporate career, everything I learned on that journey about communication skills, I put into this course. So if you are interested in that, check that out. Very, very powerful thing. And if you have ambitions to get into management and this kind of thing, run something, very important too. So these are all linked in the description box below this live stream. Okay, America First 21, my close personal friend here says, how far should you go back for experience without giving away your age or undercutting your experience? The general rule is 10 years. More than, like this is so stupid, but the way recruiters think is that if you're going back more than 10 years, it's useless. That's what recruiters think. We all know that that's idiotic, but that's how they think about these things. So 10 years is kind of the hard stop. Now, of course, the other part of this is that people that have been in the workforce for more than 10 years, usually they are not going through recruiters to get jobs at that point. They're getting their next job on the hidden job market, where you're dealing with networking. You're dealing with referrals, you're dealing with all kinds of stuff like that. So in that case, obviously your experience matters. You know what I mean? But you're dealing with individuals that understand that stuff and they care about that stuff. Okay, it's a totally different thing than, what recruiters care about. Okay? The real active window is I'm given to understand by people like Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. We do a collaborative live stream every 2 weeks. So she has said this many times. 5 years is like the big window, right? You can list stuff on there that goes back up to 10 years, and that's fine. But generally, recruiters will focus in on what you've done in the last 5 years. Okay? It's stupid for people that have like careers more than 10 years to be judged like this, because we all know that that's not what matters. That's not what your value comes from. Think of like CEOs and stuff that have, 45 years experience. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously the first 40 years of your career matters. Obviously it does, but you're not trying to impress a recruiter. You know what I'm saying? Recruiters instead are taught concepts like if you don't use it, you lose it, and things like this. So if the last time you did something was over 5 years ago, they're going to assume, oh, you don't know how to do it anymore. It's asinine. But then again, recruiters exist to fill certain positions, worker level positions, usually junior positions. So within that context, it doesn't matter as much. You know what I'm saying? Barringer says, maybe this was already covered, but is leaving the dates off your resume a red flag for recruiters? Well, not necessarily, but it can be. There are different types of resumes. There's like the functional resume, there's the hybrid resume, there's a chronological resume. If you're doing a functional resume, you won't have dates on there by definition. So that's still a legitimate thing. Now, are they open to receiving a functional resume? That depends. Right? So the answer is yes and no. It really depends. Some people will have a problem with it. Other people might have less of a problem. And I hate to always keep saying this because I sound like a broken record, but if you're getting hired through referrals or through the hidden job market in any other way, nobody gives a crap about this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like this is only when you're going through a recruiter, and most jobs don't go through recruiters. So it kind of almost doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Some guy from the internet says, thanks to AI, the CVs are becoming cumbersome. Candidates just tailor the CVs to position requirements, but fail the tech interview. How does one combat this deceptive approach as candidate or employer? Well, it's not really deceptive necessarily. It's like if somebody says, look, I'm looking for someone who can do this, and you respond with a resume that says, here's how I've done this, this, and this. You know what I mean? Like, is that deceptive? No, not necessarily. Now, if they're misrepresenting themselves, if they're lying and saying they have something when they don't, or they've done something when they haven't, then that would be deceptive. That would be an integrity issue. You're misrepresenting what you have. In which case, if the company is doing some kind of a tech interview, that suggests it's a posted job. You're not getting it through a referral. And it also suggests that they're trying to verify some of your qualifications. And that makes sense in IT. I've been in that situation where, there aren't like formal qualifications for certain skills. So when somebody says they know about something, you don't know if that means they like know it just a little bit or they're experts. So you try and verify that, right? So it's not deceptive if they're tailoring their application to answer what the employer has said. This is what we're looking for. We care about the fact that you have this, and this. So you giving a resume that's tailored to that, and you only speak to those things. That's not deceptive in itself. Obviously, the devil's in the details. You're welcome, America First. Thanks for the intelligent questions. Marcel says, and for people who hasn't been in the job market for more than 10 years, young people. Yeah, what about it? DA says, I've been a stay-at-home mom for 28 years. I've just received my medical assisting certification. How much will this hurt my chances of being hired? How much will it hurt? Oh, you mean the fact that you've been a stay-at-home mom? I don't know. Like, I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what you're going for. I don't know what your skills are. Like, if you're a stay-at-home mom, usually the thing that can get you right back into the job market is, like, do you have connections? If you're a stay-at-home mom, do you talk to any other moms? Do their husbands work at a place? Do they work at a place, where they're hiring? Now, if they know you and they trust you and they get along really great with you, and they know that you're competent, you're reliable, you're intelligent, you have all these different skills, you will jump ahead of people that may be technically more qualified than you, but this particular mom doesn't know. Those people are strangers. They could be crazy. They could be lying about everything. I mean, they have no idea. You, on the other hand, you're a known quantity. They've known you for a long time. They know you have all these great qualities. So they would rather work for you or work with you than some stranger, all things being equal. So that's a great way back into the workforce, if that's what you're looking for. If, on the other hand, you are going for something very, very specific, you've got a very specific qualification like this medical thing, and you've made up your mind that you're going after this very specific job in maybe a hospital or some very specific place, then chances are your personal network is not going to be able to help you with that. You're going to have to reach out to that organization, to the decision makers, and put yourself forward and say, like, listen, I've got some great skills. I've got this qualification, and I'm very passionate about doing this work. There's all kinds of ways you can do that. You could contact them innocently and say, like, listen, I'm really interested in learning about this industry and, learning about, like you're an expert on this. I'd very much love to get your expert opinion on how this stuff works, where we're going with in the future, what this is going to look like, what skills are going to be needed, where the industry is going and things like that. I'd very much love to hear your expert opinion on that. If you could spare me half an hour, and that's like requesting an informational interview. And what some people will do, they'll say, sure, yeah, come on down. You presented yourself professionally. There's no red flags. It seems like a legitimate thing. You go down and you talk to them, right? And one way of getting a job is doing that and then doing a delayed ask. So what that means is that you have a great conversation with them. You guys get along. You ask them a bunch of questions. How does this work? What do you guys do with this? How do you handle this? Is that like something that's ongoing? Is that a new development? And they tell you all about it because they love talking about themselves and their opinions. And then you go away. You say, thank you very much. Listen, if ever I had any follow-up questions on this stuff, would I be able to give you a call? And 95% of the time people say, sure, yeah, here's my card. So you wait a week or two, and then you send them another message. You say, listen, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned this thing. I just want you to know that, that's really fascinating. If you ever decide to go in that direction, I would love to work with you on that. So let me know if ever, you need someone to help with that, or something like that. Right. And I mean, that can open up a lot of doors. So, you know what I mean? In that case, nobody gives a rat's ass that you were a stay-at-home mom for 28 years. All they know is that you're someone that they click with, that obviously knows, the medical stuff that you were talking about. You're great to deal with. You're enthusiastic. You're professional. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that's relevant. And they'll give you a chance based on that a lot of times, right? So that's the concept. Will every place do this with you? No, but some will. So the idea is like you pepper, all these targets with these requests. And it's a ratio thing. Some will be looking for someone right now. Some people won't. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's kind of the general approach. If you want to know how all this stuff works and how to do all this, check out that course, because that's where like I put everything. I can't cover all the details in like a live stream, unfortunately, because there's so much to it. But that's where I put all that stuff. And I do have some free videos, like I referenced earlier, that are in the description box that talk about this stuff. Some guy from the internet says, thank you very much. You're welcome, some guy from the internet. Yeah, that was the AI CV thing, right? Or the deceptive thing. Greg says, how would you approach direct outreach in a more professional career? Should I focus on targeted companies and reach out to them? It's not about a company, it's about an individual. Okay, you're reaching out to an individual. That's how it works. Okay, so yeah, like I've done this with CEOs. All my consulting clients are essentially CEOs. So what I did was I contacted a ton of CEOs in my hometown of big companies, small companies, medium companies, people that they don't know who I am, and I'd never met them before. But what I did is I did nothing but informational interviews with CEOs for months and months and months. And a lot of those people ended up being my my first round of consulting clients. So yeah, you could do this at the executive level. You could do it at the board level and go like really high up. But yeah, like it's a matter of reaching out to the individuals. The people that can help you are above your level. That's the thing. Some people have a phobia of reaching out to people that are like above you. You know what I mean? You feel comfortable with people that are like your peers, but the moment you go up one level, it's like they feel like, oh, who am I to talk to them? And that's crap. If you know how to reach out to them, if you know how to present yourself professionally, and you ask for something reasonable and professional, you certainly can. I've taught university courses on this. I did a video not too long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. It's on my channel. I'm going to see if I can pull that up just while we're talking here, because I talk about that like at length. And if you're interested in that, I'm not sure if you are, but if you are, where is that here? Videos. So here's my channel. Here, it's this one here. So this was a month ago. So I made students contact CEOs. Here's what happened. So, I mean, that we're talking about high level stuff. If you're talking about that, check out that. And this was like a class I taught in a business program. Where are we here? Okay, Marcel says, I have a question. I've been applying to many jobs which I fulfill the requirements, but I'm not being contacted back. My CV seems reasonable and decent. Nevertheless, I'm feeling that the CV has flaws. How could I recognize and correct them? Well, first of all, there's a couple of things there. First of all, in the posted job market, which is what this is, where you're applying to a posted job, the reality is that there are many, many people applying for these jobs, and a lot of them are qualified. So if they're getting like 800 applications, maybe 300 of them might be qualified. Like, they might be, on paper, they're qualified to do the job as per the employer, right? So just because you're qualified doesn't mean that you're going to get a response, right? There are many people that are qualified. Everybody's looking in the posted job market. That's why you get 800 people applying for jobs of the same job. Whereas in the hidden job market, you might get 2 people applying for the same job, right? Right? The posted job market has something like 15% of all the jobs, but yet it has something like 80% of all the candidates are all looking there, are all chasing those 15% of the jobs, right? So it's very competitive. So as a result, it's not about do you have qualifications or not. A lot of people have qualifications. So it's really a crapshoot whether of all the people that are qualified, they picked you, right? So that's the first thing going on here. Okay, there may not be anything wrong with your application. It's just that they have many people that are qualified. Now, how do you know if there's something wrong with your resume or your cover letter or your job applications in general? Well, the way to tell, okay, one way to tell, the traditional fix for this is to employ a career coach. Okay, you just pay for an hour of their time to critique your resume. I'm not a career coach. I don't do this, so I'm not talking about me. Okay, but there's a lot of these people. You can find them on the YouTube. You can find them on the internet. Usually they're professional recruiters. They're people that have been recruiting for a very long time. They might even have been recruiting in your industry, which would be even better, right? So you send the resume to them and you say, like, how does this look? I'm not getting any callbacks. Is there something that's wrong with my resume, or is there something I'm doing that I could do better? And they'll look at your specific resume and they'll give you individualized personal feedback on what they think of it and why and what the reasoning is, right? Now, in general, hopefully you understand that, like I said at the very beginning of this live stream, if you have a one-size-fits-all resume or cover letter, those are not really effective anymore. You know, it has to be customized to every job you're applying for, right? You have to use their lingo. You have to speak directly to the things that they said they were looking for, like the requirements, like bam, 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 bam. We want this, 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 this. In order to get selected, you pretty much have to like speak to all of them. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have every single thing they said, but you have to speak to it. So say they're looking for 5 years experience in something, you only have 1 year experience. You say, I have 1 year experience in this, you know? And a lot of times they'll call you in anyway, because that wasn't really a requirement. It was a nice to have, you know? They said it was a requirement on the job posting, but it really wasn't a requirement, right? So, you have to customize your resume. And then there's a lot of things that they don't explicitly ask for, but it's generally understood that they are looking for that. So then you can add some of those to the resume too. Now, if you want to know what those are, like for example, let me show you. Maybe you've done this before, maybe you haven't, but just in case you haven't, here. Okay, so a job as a bookkeeper. Okay, I want to work as a bookkeeper, and I'm applying for jobs, posted jobs that they're looking for bookkeepers. Now, what are some of the things that they will want? What are some of the requirements that they will want in a candidate that usually aren't mentioned in the job posting for a bookkeeper? Just as an example. Okay, what postings say they want, blah, 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 blah. What they actually screen for and don't write. Can I trust them? Yeah, okay. So trustworthiness, right? That's pretty important. Will this person reduce my stress or create more? Well, okay. These are more soft skills. Can this person clean up a mess? What? Can this person clean up a mess without shaming anyone? Okay. Do you understand the business, not just the books? Right? So being able to demonstrate that, that's actually a good one. Will this person play nicely with my accountant, CPA? Bookkeepers live between this and that. They want someone that has demonstrated this. Or in an interview, you specifically mention that you can do that, or you put emphasis on that. Are they low maintenance? They don't need constant direction, doesn't over-communicate. Will they respect confidentiality? Like, there's a big one, right? So, okay, now you can follow up. You can say, well, okay, those are more soft skills, but are there any hard skills that they would want demonstrated, but they don't actually explicitly say in the job posting? And I'm doing this to illustrate, like, you need to do this at the very least is a great place to start, but fill in, like, your situation. You can do a full bank reconciliation, start to finish. Okay, so that's something that bookkeepers can do, a bank reconciliation, where they get on the phone with the bank and they make sure everything adds up. You understand why debits and God, I wish this would stop jumping. You understand why debits and credits move. You can clean up historical books. You know month-end close, even if they don't call it that. That's something accountants have to do. You understand payroll consequences. You can prepare books for an accountant. So these are things that, the idea here is that these are things that for the majority of bookkeeper jobs, they're looking for people that have this stuff, but they may not explicitly state that on the job posting, right? So for any job, they're going to have a bunch of those, right? So that's something else that you can speak to on your resume when you apply for the job, right? And you'll stand a higher chance of getting selected if you specifically mention this stuff or talk about how you have it or you appreciate it or whatever. Okay, so that's why tailoring your resume helps. You start by using their lingo. You start then by speaking directly to the requirements they stated. Whether you meet them or not, you address them and say how you partially have them or, whatever. I've worked with people that have that, doing the same job, or something like that. And then you go into this stuff. You demonstrate other things that they're probably looking for, but they're not saying, right? So you put all that together and you can create a very compelling resume that results in you standing a much higher likelihood of getting a call back. Does that make sense? It's getting dull here. I'm going to turn up my camera brightness. That way you guys can see my fantastic haircut more clearly. I mean, I think it's something that needs to be shared with the world, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me. It's a very underrepresented aspect of business live streaming. There we go, the whole CEO hairdo awards. Okay, so that was Marcel. So there's a couple options there. Callie Learning Circle says, what do you think about job fairs? They usually just tell you to apply online or through. Really? Is that what they do? Well, traditionally they wouldn't. There would be a purpose for them. What you would do is you would go down there and you would, if you're like, this is mainly for people coming out of school, right? Like your first career type job. You would go down to the job fair. You'd go to all the booths, right? Each employer would have like a booth or a area where they show off who they are, and they have a representative there. And you'd go up and speak to the person. Now you can come down with a stack of resumes, or you can come down, what I would recommend, is a stack of business cards. You can print off business cards, get them made for like literally $20 US or less, and I'll mail them to you. And all you do is, like, if you have a LinkedIn profile, if you know what that is, you have a LinkedIn profile, the header of your LinkedIn profile, basically you put that on a business card. Your name, your title, your professional photo, like just a headshot of you. You can take it with a cell phone, whatever. Your contact information, phone number, email, any social media thing, your LinkedIn thing, and that's it. So the idea is you go down there and then you take out, like, I've got a pocket right here. You take out your business card, you give it to the person. Now, usually they will have a business card. They give you theirs. So you walk out of the job fair with a stack of people that you met, right? You went up to their booth, you said, like, hey, what's going on here? I understand you guys do work in this area. And they say, oh yeah, let me tell you about it. There's lots of opportunities. We specialize in this and we hire people for that. Like, oh, great. Smiles, listening, right? And then you get their business card. And then you can go away. And after the job fair, maybe in the next day or the next couple of days, you have their card. So this was the person you talked to. This is their name. This is their contact information. You send them a message. You say, hey, it was great meeting you the other day. I enjoyed hearing about your company. It was actually quite fascinating. I was especially interested in this particular thing. Would you be free to perhaps have a phone call or something? I'd love to ask you some more questions about that, like whatever. And, the idea, what you're pushing for is if they have any, if they're hiring right now, which presumably they will be, or else why the hell are you at a job fair if you're not hiring? Maybe this person can recommend you and say like, well, we've got a bunch of people that have applied for this, but I've met this one and they seem pretty sharp and enthusiastic and professional. So you could start by checking them out, and then you get a job interview. So, you know what I mean? Like, these are ways in. You could do this with everyone, or you could do it only with the companies or that you really care about, or, any combination thereof. But in my experience, for people coming out of school, job fairs are they're not useless. They do get people hired, especially for entry level positions and things in like your first career job. Greg is promoting other people on my channel. Okay, great. Marcel says, yes, it makes sense. Thank you. Cool. Anyway, we've been doing this for an hour and a half. There's 22 people here. Thank you for being here. If you'd like all my advice all in one place for getting hired in the posted job market or in the hidden job market, check out my course, my Get Hired course. I have this right here. It's linked in the description box below. Best bang for the buck around. For the price of 1 hour with a career coach, you get my entire course. So check that out. Very popular course. Something like 800 people have gotten that. So, and I've gotten some great feedback from it. So, especially to learn about the hidden job market stuff and networking. And this is geared for introverts. This course is geared for introverts. And I teach, how to get hired in the hidden job market with introverts in mind. So rather than getting you to go to events and talk to people face to face, it's more what I did, which is doing it remotely and doing it over things like LinkedIn, stuff like that. So there you go. So check that out. It can really solve some problems for a lot of people. And we've reached the end of the chat there, so I'll also mention this one here. If you're looking to improve your communication skills, check out this. This is another course I have called Write Like a Professional. There's a link in the description box below. And with all of these, I've created a special video that accompanies the course that explains what the course is, how it works, what you get, all that kind of stuff. So it's as transparent as possible, so you know what you're considering when you decide to pull the trigger. So, this one is also, this is probably the most self-contained course I have, Write Like a Professional. And I'm not sure if this interests anybody here, but I also have this, the $100 MBA. So if you're looking to learn business, which is the scientific study of how to make money, that's the best bang for the buck around. That'll teach you anything and everything in an MBA program. That is an entire program, a 2-year program at university. It'll teach you all the same stuff because you're reading the same textbooks, you're being exposed to the same material, and I provide you a ton of videos that just guide you through the whole thing. So if you're interested in that, check that out. I do live streams on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I may be changing that. I'm not sure. I might do like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or something. I have to see, but at least for the foreseeable future, I'm Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I talk about business on Mondays and Fridays, entrepreneurship and higher level business stuff. But my mainstay is doing this, answering questions about job search, because that's where a lot of people need a lot of help. So there you go. It is Friday. The weekend is coming up. If you are engaged in job search, try and find some time for yourself this weekend. Force yourself to do something that you traditionally enjoy, just to get away from the job search, if only for a moment. You got to take care of your mental health, and it's an investment in you being more effective in your job search so you can hit the ground running Monday morning and kick ass. You got to take care of yourself. This is a very trying experience when you're between jobs and you have to confront this stuff, especially when you've never been introduced to like how the world works when it comes to hiring and stuff. You know, I mean, I will do one last thing. I've done this quite a bit, but I do it because most people simply are not aware of this. Of all the jobs that exist that one could get, what percentage of them are actually posted publicly as opposed to not posted? You know, I've had to do this because a lot of people, they hear stuff and they think, surely that can't be right. You must be making it up. And it's like, I'm not, you know. I do this so people can see it's an open secret. It's not coming from me. Short answer, only a minority of jobs are ever posted publicly. About 20 to 30% of jobs are posted publicly. It's actually more like 15, but who's counting? 70 to 80% are never posted at all. Okay, so that 70 to 80% includes roles filled through direct outreach, referrals, internal promotions. We should hire someone, conversations. Well, that's all the same stuff, like direct outreach and referrals. That's all of this. Here you go, Bridgestone. I guess maybe because I prompted it with that term earlier. Now it's using it back at me, so I learned something today. Contractors converted to full-time, quiet replacements. Yeah, it's basically the hidden job market. It's all these two, right? Okay, so I mean, we could go in. I'm not going to read everything, but anyway, you get the idea. So if that's surprising to you, and you know, this is new information. Congratulations, you're starting to step into a larger world. You know, posted jobs are kind of a sideshow. They always have been, and they always will be for the foreseeable future, because there's very good reasons why organizations hire, you know, through referrals and through networking. You know, you tend to get much better quality candidates that way, and it's a hell of a lot simpler, easier, and cheaper to do it. So why would you post the job publicly when you don't have to? The only time they post a job publicly is because they've looked in 3 other places first and come up short. So the first place they look is, does the hiring manager who has to fill this position, they've created a position, now they have to hire someone. Do they happen to know someone personally that is available now that would be good for this? No? Okay. Then they move on to number 2. And number 2, I got to remember though, I haven't thought of this stuff in a long time. Number 2, I keep coming up with number 3. So number 3 is they go to the HR department. They say, have we done any interviews recently with candidates that we ended up not going with? You know, maybe the number 2 choice, the runners up, you know, we've already done a background check on them. We've already interviewed them. This is recent, so they're still looking. Do we have any potential candidates like that would be good for this? Right? That's the third place they look. The second place they look is they ask around. They say, listen, you know, all the people that I work with, all the people on my team, does anybody have any recommendations? Have you worked, you know, is there somebody that you know that would be good for this that, you know, you would recommend that I should bring in for an interview? Right? Because if you've worked with people for 10 years and you trust them, and they're going to stake their reputation on recommending their brother or their friend or a former coworker or anyone like that, you know, you're staking your reputation. If you make a recommendation that, you know, you should check this person out, and they turn out to be crazy or something, they're not going to be trusted ever again by you. You know what I mean? So they've got some skin in the game. So that's why it carries weight. So they announce this. Does anybody have any recommendations? No? Okay. Then I go talk to HR. Do we have any runners up? Any people we talk to? No? Okay. I guess we have no choice now. We have to post the job. Right? Most jobs, they don't get to stage 4 where they post it. They fill it through, you know, stages 1, 2, and 3 of these places you're looking. right? Now, the thing that makes things like direct outreach work is because you're jumping into position one. They happen to know someone, and that's you. They just spoke to you. You're professional. You get along with them. You're qualified. You know they can tell you know your stuff just by talking to you. You know what I mean? So you jump in at stage one. That's how things like direct outreach work and other networking type activities. Greg says, sorry for promoting the channel, was not intentional, being a negative side. I respect not to do with time. Okay, no problem. That funny. I've never seen a Bridgestone job used like that before. Yeah. I'm now being introduced to that term for the first time. Excellent. Okay, well, thanks to everybody who showed up today. We're going to wind this down. You guys are awesome. Have yourselves a great weekend. If this whole thing of job search is getting you down, just remember, you're not alone and you're not abnormal. Congratulations, you're a human being, and this is a trying thing. But you know what? It's temporary, and you're going to be fine. Always remember, you're awesome. Take care.